There's a knock at your door. Two detectives ask you, "You have nothing to hide from the police, right? You wouldn't mind coming downtown to take a lie detector test about what you did last night, would you?" It just so happens that little Miss Muffet was found dead this morning, and you are the owner of a very rare and extremely poisonous spider collection. Of course, this lie detector can prove your innocence, right? Do lie detector tests really work? Are they foolproof? Some experts say they are. Others say they're not. If you're ever hooked up to one, chances are there's a lot at stake. I'm Mark Fitch, and I'll tell you how they work, and you can make up your own decision about their reliability. Lie detectors basically just measure physiological responses in the body related to stress. The idea is that when someone is being deceitful, the stress levels are higher than when they're being truthful. The examiner is responsible for collecting a baseline to determine the difference between truthful behavior and deceptive behavior. First, I'll explain the types of bodily responses that are measured. There's 3 in all. Second, we'll go through the different types of polygraph tests. And third, we'll talk about the actual administration process of the test. Now that you have an overview, let's move on to the physiological responses that are measured, namely respiratory rate, blood pressure, and sweating. The respiratory rate is measured through rubber tubes attached to the subject's chest and abdomen that expand and contract as the subject inhales and exhales, according to Imbardino in 2004. These tubes, called pneumographs, are filled with air and create a variable reading that's recorded on one of the graphs, according to Wiener and Hess in 2006. Measuring the blood pressure and heart rate is done in much the same way it is at your doctor's office. A cuff is attached to the subject's arm and produces a sound in relation to how high or low the blood pressure moving through that part of the body is, according to Wiener and Hess in 2006. The sweat is measured through the galvanic skin resistance. Sensors are placed on the tips of the subject's fingers that measure electric conductivity through those areas, according to Lie 1994. The more the person sweats, the less resistance is produced in those areas. This is also recorded on the graph. While recording each of these responses continuously, the testing occurs. There's 2 different types of tests that we'll talk about today: the control question test and the guilty knowledge test. The control question test has 3 types of questions: the irrelevant questions, which are designed to have little or no stress intensity to establish a normal baseline; the relevant questions, which are the questions they're trying to determine the truth for; and control questions, which are questions that are so vague they try to create doubt in the subject's mind, according to Bonser. While experts agree that the control question test is least accurate, it's the most common because it's so applicable to many different scenarios, according to Meeman, Breach, and Bull in 2003. The guilty knowledge test is a test that tests the knowledge of a specific instance that only the investigators and the guilty party would have knowledge of. For example, in a murder investigation where a knife was used, a subject might be shown a lineup of 3 to 5 knives, and if the subject response is greater to the one that was used in the murder, this subject is said to have guilty knowledge and therefore fails the test, according to Meeman, Breach, and Bull in 2003. This test is generally accepted as the most accurate, however it's the least applicable to many circumstances. After the appropriate interview format is chosen, the interview begins, so let's move on. The examiner follows a strict process consisting of 4 steps, which is considered to be the most important part of the polygraph test, according to the Aiken Polygraph Associates in 2009. When it becomes time to administer the polygraph test, they first give the pre-test. This part, the examiner and the examinee discuss the test, any medical history that the examiner has, and the exam procedure, according to the National Research Council in 2003. This usually takes about 30 minutes to 2 hours. The examiner during this time is gathering information and profiling the examinee to determine normal baseline behavior. Then the examiner designs the questions that will be asked during the test. He goes over these questions with the examinee so that they have a very equal understanding of the questions. Only the questions that are going over with the examinee are asked during the in-test. The next step is the in-test, which is the actual exam. It only consists of about 10 or 11 questions according to Bonser. Of these questions, 3 or 4 are control questions. Examinees are instructed to answer untruthfully or negatively to some control questions to give a basis of comparison. The final step is the post-test. During this portion, the examiner determines whether or not the person was telling a lie. Significant fluctuations signal that the person probably is lying, according to Bonser. So if you're ever approached by detectives and ask if you're going to take a polygraph test for them, you may now be a little more comfortable in what answer you'll give. You may tell them whether or not you feel comfortable with the polygraph test and what they show, or you may tell them that there are some flaws associated with it. I hope I was able to enlighten you on this. First thing to note is that polygraph tests are designed to monitor a person's physiological reactions to stress. They monitor heart rate, respiratory rate, and sweating to gauge this person's truthfulness. Another thing to say is, according to today's law, lie detector tests are not admissible in court unless all parties agree that they can be used as evidence. Employers can use polygraphs to screen their potential employees only after obtaining permission to do so, according to the Aiken Polygraph Associates in 2009. Third and finally, lie detector tests aren't really capable of detecting lies. They can only measure the stress associated with possibly telling a lie. I want to thank you for your time and your attention.